This is Henry Washington, and you're listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below.
Hello, and welcome back to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. I'm your host today, Tanya Schultz, the Money Life Coach, and today's guest is Darius Ross. He's a pro business consultant and motivational speaker with over 30 years of entrepreneurial experience behind him. We're so excited to talk to you today, Darius, and hear more about your leadership, like all your background in leadership and everything that you do. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's been a very pleasure, Tanya, to be here. Appreciate it so much.
Yeah. So let's just dive right in and let's get into your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into what you're doing today.
I like the title of your show. I'm the average Joe that actually lucked upon entrepreneurship by accident and based upon losing a job and going into entrepreneurship out of necessity. And with that all being said, we found out that this entrepreneurial path is very riddled with obstacles and situations and circumstances, and you have to be creative. And as I talk about in my own shows and interests, the guerrilla mentality. You have to be prepared for any and all obstacles, any and all circumstances, and adapt.
Yeah.
Period. There's no if, and, buts about it. You have to pretend you're in war, and anything happens, you have to be prepared for it, because things will change at a moment's notice. So that's my background in 30 years of adjusting and adapting to whatever came across the table, whether it was homelessness or whether it was dealing with people that had addictions that were in your lifestyle, personal lifestyle, whatever else. Dealt with it all. And from the business perspective, some businesses did well, some not so well. So it is what it is.
Wow. What was the first business that you started and how you got into that?
Real estate by chance, buying a couple of buildings that were best is called. They were on 2 legs of a kickstand. So literally they were falling down. And
oh, dang.
They were those kind of properties. And so you took the best of that and made the best of it. And from there, you went from there. But again, they were not the kind of properties that you would buy. These buildings were probably 100 years old and they were in bad shape.
Was that in Chicago where you grew up?
That was actually Southern Illinois.
Okay. And then from there, so you were just like, hey, I'm going to how did you get into real estate? Did you see somebody else doing that? Or were you like, hey, I can make some money doing this? What was your thought process with
No, actually, there was a neighbor down the street that actually was involved in it. And my mom was prompting and pushing me to get into it. And from there, I realized with college, your professors are talking about economics, but when you can realize you can do a deal and do a flip and make more money than they can, it's really obvious as to what angle and avenue to go to. So
yeah.
You figure you can make, say, 5% down, you can flip that for maybe $20,000 or $30,000. It's pretty simple in mathematics, how you play that game.
Yeah. And who did you have as mentors to help you figure that out? Or were you just you just figured it out on your own or through that process?
Interestingly enough, I was one of those self-learners, and I must give praise, whether I like his business economics or not. Mr. Trump, I must give to his art of the deal, because with him, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and the 50 Laws of Power, all those books shaped how I developed business. And so as a result, learning from people that made the mistakes and looking at the players in the industry at the time, you had people like Colbert, Kravitz, and Roberts that were doing the mergers and acquisitions. So I learned about leverage. That was the key, how to leverage and how to use debt as your best friend.
Yeah. And from there, what did you get into next? Or what was kind of the next business from there and figuring that piece out?
It was then consulting, because I found out consulting for equity, how you can actually get involved in buying someone's business because they help. And so you can sell for equity. Listen, I'll help you out in your business. You give me some stock, you give me a percentage of blah, 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 blah. So before you know it, now I've got all these businesses I'm a part owner to. And now all of a sudden your net worth is increasing. You go from zero net worth to a millionaire overnight because Somebody's now said, okay, well, I can't run this business. So I bring somebody in that can run the business and I make a profit. They make a profit. Everybody wins.
Yeah, we've had some podcasts on that topic too. If you guys go back on buying other people's businesses and things like that, it's super interesting.
Mhm.
Obviously, there's a lot more to it than just like, oh, buy somebody's business. But there's a lot of different ways you can do that. So that's interesting that you bring that up. And so on the leadership side and what you're doing now with like the books and stuff, what was that transition like? And what have you been doing as far as that area goes?
Books were an accident because I realized it's like one of those opportunity things. You sit and you say, well, now I've got 1,000 different lessons. Now I've got 100,000 lessons. Now I've got 1,000,000 lessons. And I'm constantly putting these lessons in what I call my memorabilia. I have a container, literally a storage container full of lessons that I learned. And I'm thinking now, what if, and I'm hearing people talk about these books and their expertise. What if I put this in a book? So then I started writing books and manuals. Then I started realizing, well, I'm consulting, I might as well get paid for it. So that's how the books came about. That's how lecturing came about and seminars and so forth. Because I realized I've got the material and I've got real hard material because these are real either screw ups, fuck ups as I call them, and or situations that no matter what you do, you can fail, but how to avoid failure. So that's how this all came about.
Yeah.
And on the ground.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like, okay, now I want to share with people what I'm learning and be able to help more people.
Well, see, that's the funny part about it. It wasn't actually helping. It was like, how do I avoid these situations? Because now I'm running the ship and I'm running somebody else's ship and somebody else's business. And now I got to turn around and make sure that I keep my profit margin going, because if I don't, I now own a business, I own part of the business that I'm going to lose out on. So it wasn't really helping people in the beginning. I have to be honest here and transparent. It was because my own quote unquote ass was on the line. So now I got to make sure that I don't look bad, because I hate it. I'm one of those OCD kind of characters. I don't want to look bad. So all the labels have to be turned a certain way. So it's the same thing. I don't want this to blow up in my face because I'm like, everybody's watching. He's taking a chance. He's taking a risk. Is he going to screw it up? That was the big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I love that. Sounds like it's been like calculated, like things came from one to another, and then you just like weren't set on, oh, I got to just stay in real estate because that's what I know. It's like, okay, how can I figure out the next thing and what else can I do? Which is hard for a lot of people. So how do you explain, I read something about which you brought up in the very beginning, the guerrilla mentality. How do you teach that to entrepreneurs, like to other people? And how do you, explain your take on that and what your thought process is about, like how you have to be successful.
I'm a kid of the 60s. So for those folks that are at least my age, 50 or over, the millennials probably don't know this, but there's a cartoon called Guerrilla. Mm-hmm. At the time, there was Walter Cronkite on CBS News, and they were showing the Vietnamese guerrillas. So you're about to figure out about where I'm about to go with this.
Yeah.
I'm thinking at 9 or 10 years old, these are real gorillas. And I'm like, wow, they're tearing stuff up. This is crazy stuff. And then meantime, Planet of the Apes comes on at 3:00. So I'm like, wow, these gorillas are some bad dudes. They're getting it up. They're tearing it up. Okay. So from that, I got off into loving my military soldiers, the Army soldiers, and everything else. Then I started reading books about the Delta Force, the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers, and so forth. So I started realizing if you can adapt the same principles of the dedication, the agility, the seriousness, and the razor sharp precision like a sharpshooter, there's nothing that you can't accomplish. But you have to be able to realize the endurance. There's something called endurance, diligence, and crazy entrepreneurial stupidity. You have to be crazy to think that this is all going to go right. So you have to expect and anticipate that everything's going to go wrong and accept failure. That's the number one thing, accept failure. And one of the things that I say in one of my talks, I go, listen, we're going to picture this as soldier and military battle. There's 1 million troops on one side, and there's only 50 of us, and we have a cache of weapons. Now, the number one thing that we can do to win this war is accept the fact we're going to die.
Yeah.
And the two thing of it is they don't know there's only 50 of us. So if we make a big boom bang here and there, they have no idea. They may think it's 1 million of us over here, and we're equally matched. But what they don't realize is sometimes the numbers don't matter. Sometimes it's agility, shrewdness, and the strategic advantage of catching somebody off guard. Mm-hmm. So this whole guerrilla mentality is all about being able to catch off guard. And I'll give a real simple principle here.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos and Amazon is nothing more than Sears on mail order. I worked with Sears for years as a 17-year-old. And that's Sears on computers. Okay. Now, the issue of the hour is Sears had a chance to buy him out. They didn't. So they didn't see the young whippersnapper coming along behind them. Now, here's a company that's 200 or 300 years old, I should say 100 some odd years old, that didn't catch the whippersnapper coming along behind them. Microsoft, the same way. Bill Gates, same thing with IBM. IBM had the technology, but they didn't use it. So sometimes you have to be smart enough to realize when you see a whippersnapper coming along behind you, adapt and bring him in and use that entrepreneurial / mindset and make him an entrepreneur inside your corporation. Do not let that person get past you, because they will at some point in time make you extinct like a dinosaur.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard when companies or people, we get caught in our like patterns, right? So we get stuck in like what we know, and it's hard to say, oh, we want to accept change or try this thing that's new and may or may not work. So there's that risk there, right? But yeah, taking a chance and being able to have the foresight to try new things, even with Amazon, right? The original idea of books and that whole thing and how it branched out. Yeah, I think that adaptability, like you're saying, and pivoting and trying new things is a huge piece of entrepreneurship. And people get stuck in tunnel vision, like they want things to go, they try one thing, do it, and but then you have to realize when you need to pivot and move on, which can be hard for people to know when to do that.
Well, the hardest part of it is hubris. When you get so into yourself that you don't see the terrain. And so I use that exercise about the entrepreneurs. Let's go outside in the dark. Now, feel the terrain, feel where you are, and realize that where you are, you can feel your way around without ever having sight. Because a blind person has to depend on their senses.
Yeah.
That's the point. Can you depend on your senses to survive? That's where many entrepreneurs go wrong at. They don't use their senses because they can sense something's going wrong. You can sense your business is on the wrong track. You can sense that there's something that's happening with your customers. But you're afraid because of your stubbornness or because of your mindset of, I know what I know. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes there's a subordinate in there that's saying, okay, you know what? They want to try Philly cheesesteak, but you're selling hamburger. Well, it's the Philly cheesesteak, okay? But you're not listening to somebody that's telling you what's happening. And you're on the ground.
Well, that's like did you see the McDonald's document that I guess not a documentary, but on the real story that reminded me of that. Like the guy who came in to franchise, the original brothers wanted to have one location and then how the other guy saw another vision, obviously. So he kind of used them in some sense, but yeah, it's a similar story of, okay, he saw a bigger vision than even they did, and he helped them reach that.
When you bring up a good story there, because McDonald's is not in the hamburger business, they're in the real estate business. People don't understand that.
Yep.
They own more real estate, almost close to the federal government. But that's the problem. They realize, okay, hamburgers are just the buy part. What we have here is a business that we can actually control the real estate. Beautiful thing.
Yep. Yeah, because that was the interesting like twist in the story, right? It's like, oh no, we're renting out these properties and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, actually we buy the land, and now making profit off hamburgers becomes a lot less important than what that land is actually worth and what the building's worth. Yeah, love that. So can you explain a little bit more? What are some of your tools that you help individuals realize their potential to break through challenges or like places when they're feeling stuck? What are some recommendations and things that you use, maybe personally and then with other people?
One of the number one things that I use, I have two programs that I use. And the first program is the no bullshit. And with that in mind, let's take a step back. Look at where you are right now. Are you happy where you are right now? Let's get past your degree. Let's get past your 2.3 kids. Let's get past your $1 million house. Let's get past your boat. Are you happy where you are now? Or are you looking at society saying that you've made it? If you are now having a midlife crisis and you're saying you're not where you want to be at now, then who's the problem?
Well,
let's address that. Okay. And then if you're now saying, okay, I want to do something different, what are you going to do? You got time left. You got ample time left, but time is running out because you're spending so much time being frustrated about where you're not. That's the first program. The second program is, I best call it you're upped up. And I use the F word instead.
Yeah.
Now, in that particular scenario, this situation brings it to a whole other light. Okay, now that you've made all the mistakes that you've made, you had all the partying, you did all the crazy stuff, Do you now recognize what went wrong and why? So now what moves are you going to make to reflectively change that? Are you going to reflectively look inward and say, you know what? I'm the problem. I've got to now make adjustments.
Yeah.
What are those adjustments going to be? And it starts with you acknowledging the fact that you made a mistake. Or you may have made many mistakes, but what's the new adjustment going to be to fix that?
Yeah.
Are you going to now say to yourself, my business is in the tank, my marriage is in the tank, all these things. Now let's line them up and let's figure out how do you get from here to where you want to be at.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's the hardest thing is looking yourself in the mirror and saying that's how it was when I decided, or what I realized when I was trying to get out of debt and then figure out my own personal finances was like, okay, there 15 years of me doing the same thing and it's not working, living paycheck to paycheck, using my credit cards, like overspending, not paying attention to where my money's going. And until I was like, I'm the problem, but then I'm the solution, right? And that's the powerful shift that people can make. Yeah, we might have grown up a certain way, have certain background, patterns, all these things. You are also, there's so much more power because we give our power away to other people and think like, oh, well, I didn't learn that. And my husband takes care of this for me, or like blah, 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 blah. So I think it's hard for people to do because you have to drop the ego wants you to be like, oh no, you should have figured it out already. So
The hard part about that is called accountability. Are you going to be accountable to yourself? Forget everybody else. Because when you go and you lay down at nighttime in the bed, you're the only one crying. There's nobody else there. And I use the other analogy. When you end this life, there's only one box. There's only one person in that box. So you have two choices between the tears and the box. What are you going to do in the meantime?
yeah, I love that. I think that's really inspiring and just a good reminder for everybody out there who we can make excuses so easily now and blame other things and this and that. But it's like taking that accountability and taking the first step to change was the first step to potentially changing your entire life and make it a lot better
Oh, yeah.
where you want it to be. Why is cultivating an entrepreneurial mindset necessary for business leaders? And why do you think some of them, is it when they don't that they fail, when they don't have that mentality?
When you walk into a business that you think is going to succeed, we'll say that when you think you're going to succeed, you have all the ideas, you have the business plan, you have the investors, you have everything that you have. But there's one problem that you don't have that you should have. It's customers. How do I lure this person into this environment? What makes them want to buy from me? I'll give a good example. Wendy's was so popular in the 80s because where's the beef? Little Claire was the sales sign of everything. Okay.
Yeah.
She made everything possible. So sometimes it's the crazy zaniness, the off the chain, the weird stuff that makes it work. Can you think out of the box? Again, back to the guerrilla mentality. Are you willing to turn around and figure out why your customer wants to buy this hamburger? There's 1,000 different hamburgers out there. There's 1,000 different washing machines there, and so forth and so forth. What makes people want to appreciate Whirlpool? Because of the guarantee that you're going to get your money, irregardless of the warranty and so forth. Sears, they were standing by the guarantee. Amazon, the Prime, you're going to get it fast. The gimmick.
For
Can
sure.
you think out of the box what the customers want? Stop being who you want it to be and who are your customers? What do they want? Ask yourself that. And then as an entrepreneur, realize that it's not what you want and what you're selling. It's what the customers want to buy and why they want to buy it. I ask two questions. Why? And what do I bring to the table differently? Because people always want to do that. It's like, I got this product here. Somebody's going to buy it. But what do you bring to the table that makes me want to buy it? What makes you charismatic? What makes you charming? What makes you irresistible? And I say to most entrepreneurs, you're not selling the business. You're selling yourself.
So true. Yeah, I love that. I remind people of that all the time, coaching too. Yeah, whatever you're putting out there, everything is marketing in a sense, and like who you are, So yeah, that's really good take. Let's get into some of the final round. Since we've already been chatting for about a half hour, let's go into the final round of questions. So what is the biggest mistake that you've ever made when it comes to your finances or business life?
Being too close to trusting people that you think have your best interest in mind. Very important.
How do you avoid that? That's like a very difficult thing to do for some people when you think you can trust people.
For men, It is being aware of the fact that when you're hanging out and you're chilling and you're having a great time, remember who's buying the beers, who's buying all this wonderful stuff that you're doing. For ladies, remember, it is not about the latest red bottoms or the latest Chanel bag or the latest Birkin bag. If you have nothing to put in that bag, guess what?
Ooh.
What is the bag? Okay. You got
Yeah.
a $10,000 bag, but you have nothing in it. Okay. That's not realistic. So the bottom line of it is trusting people around you because you're trying to look like and be connected to where they are and you're not there.
Yeah. That's
So the fake it till you make it syndrome doesn't necessarily work across the board.
for sure. No, I know. I sometimes hate that. It's like it works in a sense, but then there is a price to pay usually when you do that for a lot of people, especially in the finance side, like you said. What is something that you've learned that you wish you would have known sooner when you first started out as an entrepreneur?
Be smart enough to understand sales. You have to be, and I'll give the two analogies. You have to be able to sell salt to a slug, snow to Santa Claus, and winter to an Eskimo. Very simple. If you can do those three things, you are the ultimate salesperson.
Yeah.
You got to focus on how to market, how to sell. And I don't mean in the sense of the MBA style thing. It's a matter of you can turn around and sell a little kid on your ideology. That's it. You got to make it very basic and simple. Can I sell a little kid? And to men, how charming are you when it comes to ladies? Ladies are the biggest market. Are you charming enough to sell your product to women? Because women buy all the time, but are we enough to sell it to them?
Yeah, that's so good. Sales is huge. And people, a lot of women, especially, they like avoid it if they're having their own business. But yeah, sales is just sharing, especially if you believe in your product and what you're doing, that comes across naturally. It shouldn't be like you're making somebody believe something. It should come across organically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. Do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to somebody who wants to get into entrepreneurship or who is maybe wants to take their business to the next level?
Develop a thick skin, be prepared for losses, be open to failure. And one of the most important things, acknowledge the fact that you don't know everything. So be the dumbest person in the room so you can appreciate the intelligence around you. And try to find the best resources, whether it's online education, whether it's mentors, whether it's people that have an affinity in your industry, or just generally spend my time with probably 1,000 newspapers, magazines plus a week. So everything and anything that's going on. I want to be knowledgeable about every category of what's happening in the markets and around me on not just real estate, but in general. Because from that, you gather ideas. From that, you gather collective people. You start seeing the people in the industry and you start figuring out the conferences and the events. Be where the action is.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, that was like my original career as a journalist. It was all like where I lived, who I surrounded myself with. And same thing like with what you said with be the dumbest person in the room because you don't want to. Yeah, normally in finances, people tend to hang out with like people who are making like similar. It's like you want to hang out with people who are making like way more and doing other bigger things the majority of the time anyway, because then it gets you thinking differently and seeing things differently.
And then I'll tag one other thing on there. Be able to be open to individuals that are not exactly where you are, because you'll learn something there too. Sometimes you learn things from people that are not necessarily as wise as you might be or wise as other people around you. So take some time to spend time in places where, the people in the room are not on the same caliber, but you learn ideas, you learn information. And maybe that person does not have the ability to bring their idea to fruition, but you do.
Yeah, that's a good point too. That's really good. Do you have any favorite business, investing, or real estate related books or podcasts that you like?
I would say probably the books would probably be Machiavelli, definitely. Sun Tzu, The Art of War for definite, and that 50 Laws of Power. I mean, that actually sums up life in a nutshell, and that sums up business too, because there's so many things you can take from those books if you use them appropriately. And there's another one. I've got one out now that we just did as a group, Leadership DNA. It talks about thriving in the business culture. So that's one that I participate in. So.
Yeah, that's great. Those are really good recommendations. I love those. And where can people find more information about you, follow you, website, social media, all the things?
They can reach me at dariusross.com. I'm on YouTube and Facebook, of course. And the new book is out now, Leadership DNA. That's Amazon and so forth, Spotify, all the podcasts there, as well as there's a new one coming out now. It's going to be called TPS. That'll be out probably in May or June. So I'll be talking about timing, synchronicity, and precision, what entrepreneurship is all about.
I love that. Yeah, we'll put those in the show notes for you guys to check out too. The links to find Darius and all that he's up to, especially if you want to become an entrepreneur or learn more about the mindset that he's talking about and that everybody, needs to consider. Definitely excited to share that with you guys. Close out. Do you have any final words of wisdom, thoughts that you want to leave our with listeners with today?
I would say one of the most important things about entrepreneurship goes back to, as your show was called, The Average Joe. Realize where you are. Never leave the mindset of being the average Joe, no matter how much money and how financially well off you become. Recognize that you have to have empathy. I mean, that's a big thing now that we're missing on in this new political environment is empathy, and recognizing that there's going to come a point in time where people have to start realizing that both politically and socially, how you navigate says a lot about your humanity. And we have left a lot of that humanity in how we're dealing with people, like this whole immigration thing and everything else. People don't really understand we're all immigrants here in this country. Nobody's originally here. So therefore, we have to be very careful how we do these things.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely good reminder to everybody. And we just want to thank you today, Darius, for joining us. It's been awesome speaking with you and hearing more about your background and inspiration for everybody. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate it.
Thank you from Mike and I and everybody who listens to the podcast. Make sure that you go leave us a 5-star review if you haven't already, and let us know what you liked about today's podcast and what you're going to take away from it. And make sure you share it with somebody who needs this today too. So goodbye from Lake Tahoe, and we'll see you soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.